You cannot have a culture with only one person. You have to have other people participating in that culture. Otherwise, it is a personality. But it becomes the way that group of people, however that group is interacting, and what they do together. It's useful also for AFS students or exchange students to think about their own cultural memberships. Where do they belong and why? Why are they a member of this group, and what is it about that group that they identify with, and how they identify themselves? And more importantly, perhaps, is what groups do they not belong to, even in their own society? Mm-hmm. Because in this way, they can also see what are the kinds of differences that they are not able to cross at this point in their own society. And as they think about going abroad, these are challenges that might be even greater when they come in contact with a totally new culture that they aren't familiar with. Dressing too formally for an informal event happens. Dressing too informally for a formal event also happens, and it happens at every level. The point is maybe more what you do after you discover this situation and how you adapt to it. Suddenly you're somewhere else and the rules have changed. And you will be embarrassed sometimes because you won't quite know what to do. And really that's okay. It's something that you can survive and overcome, and it's not necessarily that important in the longer term. It might make a good story for you to tell later on. If you make a mistake. When you are faced with someone who is communicating to you in a very different style, it's sometimes very hard to accept, or you run to the conclusion that that person is angry with you, that person is generally nasty as a personality trait, or that that person has some political issue to fight with you. And that in fact could be true, but it's not necessarily true. It may simply be that the culturally ingrained style of communication, the way of getting a point across, the way of showing emphasis may be different than the person is used to. My advice to students is not to worry so much if they make a mistake, if they dress inappropriately, if they say something that seems to cause offense, or if they feel offended. That these are all situations that are common throughout life, particularly when you're crossing cultures, when you're dealing with someone from a different background. And you simply must understand the situation the best you can, accept what you've done, forgive yourself, and continue. It's probably most important to have an awareness of your own culture when you're dealing with another culture, because too often a person will assume that everything about their own culture is normal, and that is the way everything happens. That is the way everyone will believe, will behave, will think. And many students say how much they've been helped by the advice to withhold judgment about a situation, and that is a good thing. But what they learn is to say, oh, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different. So that's withholding judgment, and that's good. But to say it's just different, that I hear a lot of emphasis in that just different, that minimizes what might be a very important difference to really explore and understand, and not to say, oh, it's just different, and then dismiss it, and not think about it, and not reflect on it, and not study what might be the background of that difference. Why might there be a difference, and what might it mean that I'm not understanding because I don't react that way, and I'm not that way. So this is, again, an opportunity to learn through cultural difference. Sometimes it's very useful to think about learning a culture in a way of learning a language. And of course, language is part of the culture. But when you learn another language, if that's the first time you start talking about grammar, and you've never talked about grammar with your own language, you won't really have a good sense of what you're talking about with a noun, a verb, a preposition, or any of those forms of speech, sentence structure. None of it will make any sense because the way you talk, the way you've been trained to talk, is something that you've just grown up to as natural. Well, similarly, until you know what is the structure of your own language, you have a very difficult time transferring that knowledge that you have really acquired, that innate ability to act, to speak in your own language, or to act in your own culture. That ability is transferable only if you understand its structure and how it operates in a more theoretical way, and not just in a practiced way or a native way. I think intercultural competence, in the way we would think about it, is not this competence that comes innately from someone who is exposed all the time to a variety of cultures just in general, but from the person who is more deliberately choosing to listen and to observe and to try to understand where the other person is coming from, what is their background, what is it that makes them interesting. And intercultural competence is the person who is interested in understanding what the other person's culture is about.